From the CISO Series, it's cybersecurity headlines.
Arc browser's Windows launch sabotaged. Another healthcare supplier breached. Black Basta claims hack on fuel distributor. That last one, a little less dramatic. These are some of the stories that my colleagues and I have selected from this past week's cybersecurity headlines. Like a day out at the racetrack, we're looking at all the names of those horses. We're picking out the winners. Batman the horse? I don't think so. And we're picking out all of our favorites, and we've chosen them for some insight, opinion, and expertise from our returning guest, Dimitri van Zantvliet, CISO at Dutch Railways. Dimitri, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me again. Great pleasure.
Excellent. I cannot wait. There's a ton of fantastic stories I need your thoughts on. Real quick, before we jump into those, we want to take a moment to thank our sponsor for today, Vanta, compliance that doesn't suck too much. Remember to join us on YouTube Live. Go to CISOseries.com, hit the events drop down and look for the cybersecurity headlines week in review image. That is one way to join us. If you click on that, you can join in our chat. We've got a bunch of friendlies in there. They're always lending their thoughts, maybe perhaps some sarcasm, perhaps some witticisms, some sophistry even on occasion. And we love seeing that in our chat. So if you can get in there each and every Friday at 3:30 Eastern, we would love to have you there. We've got about 20 minutes though, so let's just jump right into the news. As I alluded to at the opening, Arc browser's Windows launch sabotaged by malvertising. The much anticipated launch of the Arc browser for Windows, a new browser that's already received positive reviews, it's been released on iOS and macOS, has been marred by a Google Ads malvertising campaign that lured people into downloading Trojanized installers to receive malware payloads. A report from Malwarebytes describes how the threat actors set up malicious advertisements on Google Search to attract users looking to download the new shiny browser. Since these ads installed the Arc browser as expected, it's unlikely that victims will realize they have become infected by malware. So, Dimitri, the story seems like a perfect storm, especially, for technology geeks such as myself, maybe a little eager to download and play with a new toy, have their guard down for some suspicious activity. And this group comes along and acts kind of like ticket scalpers, kind of moving in and taking over what should have been a great event. In hindsight, could this have been handled better, or is this just a case of lessons learned? We have to be on the lookout for these types of attacks.
Well, Rich, I think this is a mind-blowing story to me because the extent to which the adversaries went to tamper the whole software installation process is abnormal. Just look at they anticipated on the launch date, right, and set up an advertising campaign and CNC infrastructure to deliver the payloads. And I mean, for what? It's a spray and pray campaign to unknown targets, and this really all sounds very fishy to me. And I don't have the evidence for that, and you can call me paranoid, but looks more like a reputation attack than a financially driven thing. So, I mean, state actors or competitors, or qui bono, you choose.
Well, yeah, I mean that's the thing, right? Yeah, to court. Usually these types of attacks are, they're extremely low. You have to put out a ton of volume of these ads to get any kind of click through. And with something like this, the word gets out. We're talking about it right now. Within days of the launch. So I do wonder what. We like to think about threat actors as, hey, they're running a business. This is an organization. They're expecting a payoff from this investment, and this kind of stuff. I don't know what they could have hoped other than, you're right, reputational cost or hesitancy, to look at the browser if you're on Windows or something like that. That's a really interesting point. I hadn't thought about this with this story.
So perhaps Google, perhaps Apple.
We'll see if more details come out, and we will update it on cybersecurity headlines if we find out more.
We will not speculate.
We will. I will not throw stones at glass browser houses. I don't know how that metaphor works anymore. Anyway, our next story here: Cencora breach exposes patient info from 11 drug companies. Some of the world's largest drug companies have disclosed data breaches following a cyber attack at Cencora, formerly known as AmerisourceBergen. Good idea on the rename there. A pharmaceutical services provider specializing in drug distribution, specialty pharmacy, consulting, and clinical trial support. The data stolen includes full names, addresses, health diagnoses, medications, and prescriptions. Although no number of exposed patients appears available, This is because the 11 companies impacted, including Novartis, Bayer, and GlaxoSmithKline, are processing the impact individually. Probably see dribs and drabs of numbers exposed for each company. So, Dimitri, every day it seems like third-party vendors are becoming a significant weak point, or we're discovering more how much these are a weak point in kind of our security plans here, especially in healthcare. I know that in Europe, the new Digital Operations Resilience Act, or DORA, is putting some teeth into vendor relationships for financial institutions. Should it become a model for maybe how to relate to third-party vendors in other industries?
Absolutely. And you know what the DORA Act is for financial institutions, the European NIST 2 and the Critical Entity Resilience directives are the same for vital infrastructure such as railways. And actually, in Europe, we have 12 cyber laws coming at us like a tsunami. I mean, this is really something to handle. But I think supply chain risk management is essential part of those regulations. And if you don't set it up properly and have proper oversight, you will be fined and even held accountable on a personal level. Um, but in the end, I think it all boils down also to getting rid of PII you don't need any longer, and proper encryption and centralized ownership of sensitive data. And perhaps in the future, even homomorphic encryption should be mandatory in, for this kind of sensitive data.
We're just starting to really have data minimization kind of discussions in the US. Maryland has it, and then their new privacy law, like, mandates it. So we're starting to
Mhm.
see some traction there. I mean, is that where the industry seems to think like, hey, if the less we have of this stuff, the less we're exposed when inevitably these breaches occur? Or is that like a more idealistic, way of looking at this?
I think it's a combination of having, less information and managing the data lifecycle, and also having just like the basic hygienes in order, like having MFA on your database, on your access, on your APIs. So a lot of the regulations that come from Europe now have specifics on how to set up an information management system, how to have your governance set up properly, and report to the board. And a large part of it, as I said earlier, is about the liability for board members themselves.
Well, we will get into some board liability later in the show. But next up here, Black Basta claims hack on fuel distributor Atlas. According to researcher Dominic Alvieri, Black Basta has added Atlas, one of the largest national fuel distributors in the US, to its victims list. Atlas moves 1 billion gallons of fuel per year to the 49 continental US states, and data stolen includes data belonging to departments such as accounts, HR, finance, and executives, as well as user and employee data. So just kind of hitting all the bases there. Dimitri, there's a temptation when hearing stories like this for people to kind of shrug and say, well, they only stole boring corporate info, no big deal. Conveniently forgetting that such information carves an easy path toward much more dangerous places. I'm thinking specifically OT controls. As someone who is in charge of a major infrastructure system like yourself and securing it, what advice would you give about paying attention to this type of theft, and who would you give it to?
Yeah, as if gas and electricity aren't expensive enough already. So
Yeah.
don't touch our gas. But I might agree a little bit with shrugging it off. It appears that this is a financially motivated gang that wants to make a buck, and this will continue to be so. It's a daily practice. So I don't believe we lie awake from that. What worries me more are the more than clear indications that state-sponsored APTs are hiding in our critical infrastructure and preparing for doomsday. You hear the stories all over the place, whether that be because of the invasion of Taiwan by China or the Baltics by Russia. They are luring in there and waiting to press the button. I mean, that's what's keeping me awake if I'm awake.
Yeah, it's that reality that, I think we've seen this like very specifically since, the Russian invasion of Ukraine, that now like if there was ever a point where cyber was a side theater or something like that, it is now, part and parcel with the entire, playbook for anything like that. And we certainly see signs on pretty much every national government that, yeah, these are contingencies that we're having in place that, hey, they know that we have some sort of access here. We know they have some sort of access here, and all sorts of stuff can hit the fan. If something hot starts up.
Yeah, no,
So
I think
definitely a scary reality to think about.
scary reality. I think in the Netherlands a couple of months ago, the Department of Defense announced that they found some APTs in their infrastructure. So just for them to come out with this kind of information is just well,
Yeah.
nerve wracking.
Well, yeah, and then you try to read between the lines of like, all right, well, if they're saying it this, how many instances where they aren't saying that is
Exactly,
that getting
exactly.
out there?
Yeah,
Like I always think about that when I see stuff from CISA. It's like, what is promoting them to talk about this thing specifically? And that's what always gets very
what's
interesting.
behind it? Yeah.
All right, next up here, funding cuts expand backlog of unanalyzed vulnerabilities. New research from VulnCheck shows that over 90% of submissions to the US government's National Vulnerabilities Database, or NVD, have not been analyzed or enriched since the agency announced cutbacks back in February. CVE enrichment involves the inclusion of public feedback following the creation of a vulnerability number. This has been adversely affected by cutbacks. Out of 12,720 new vulnerabilities added since February, 11,885 remain not analyzed. In addition, 82% of bugs that have a public proof of concept exploit have also not been examined. NIST, which operates NVD, is aware of this issue. It's kind of come out and said a couple of different times that it's working on it. And it's also announced just this week that it signed a service support contract to help deal with that backlog, hopes to be through it by the end of September. But Dimitri, backlogs like this are typical, I guess, are typical when we're looking at budget related shortfalls, and that adds a new element when criminal organizations can count on us not enriching these vulnerabilities. Do you think this is something that, I don't know, looking at the toolkit that we have out in front of us right now, like we could throw some AI at this to maybe help deal with these kind of shortfalls?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's a asymmetric game we're talking about, and the one side has deep pockets. I recently heard about $10.6 trillion are going around in cyber criminality, and I think, yeah, of course, AI will be a part of the solution. AI and proper automation. Actually, it's sad that their success became the downfall as well, because every would-be researcher is submitting now a CVE counting on a claim of fame. And I think the other side of the amount of the CVEs, the amount of CVEs is increasing every year. So perhaps we should all give NIST a global shout out, because speedy remediation of risks is crucial. But then again, Rich, investing in automation and AI will cost money too, and I think this is precisely the issue, that the government isn't providing any funds anymore. So that there's more to do than just AI and automation.
Yeah. Well, and knowing that any kind of automation usually requires way more scale up. It's not like you can like get rid of people to enable automation, right? Like that's the point of like most human effort, and then you start realizing the gain. So yeah, NIST not exactly in a great position to do something. It's sad though. It reminds me of like infrastructure discussions, especially in the U.S., where it's like there is a clear like there's one of the easiest like economic arguments to make that like investing in infrastructure,
Hmm.
investing in something like NVD, like having that as a resource that everyone can draw on, like that there is a tangible economic benefit to that, and it's very weird to kind of not to see that there's a disconnect in that kind of funding. And
Yeah.
hopefully their GoFundMe will be successful. We can only hope. Listen, you can get a free T-shirt if you support them for $20. I'm just kidding. I don't know.
Exactly, but I mean, how long have we been talking about the vulnerability exchange mechanism that we are dying to build altogether?
Yeah.
Exchange for sending the CVEs and connecting it to your SBOM. That's, I think, we a solution that we all need,
Mhm.
and not having a budget with NIST is not helping too much.
All right. Well, before we move on to our next story, we have to spend a few moments and thank our sponsor for today, Vanta. Are lengthy security reviews pulling attention away from your security program? With the largest network of trust centers, Vanta can help you streamline security reviews to win customer trust, save time, and close deals fast. Proactively demonstrate security by showcasing key resources like your SOC 2 or ISO 27001 and provide real time evidence for passing controls. And when a security questionnaire is required, Vanta takes the first pass for you. Visit vanta.com/CISO to take a tour. CCL in our chat, just going back to our last story, says maybe start charging security companies for the data, and then that'll all help out. I
Yeah.
don't know if NVD wants to be a vendor like that starts. I don't know. It changes the mission a little bit, but CCL, I like thinking outside the box, thinking how we can maybe a little dash of a market solution can help us out there. All right, our next story here: Ascension's recovery highlights the less visible effects of a healthcare cyber attack. A couple of big healthcare developments this week. First, as the Ascension Healthcare Network's 140 member hospitals and senior care centers come back online following this month's cyber attack, the non IT horror stories are starting to emerge. Staff using fax machines to order prescriptions, waiting hours for vital scans, asking patients to bring their own documentation. I mean, really, the list goes on here. We've heard that these hospital ransomware stories, or we've heard these hospital ransomware stories before, certainly covered them on this show. Plenty, we probably will more in the future, but possibly the worst is that some healthcare workers have criticized Ascension itself for ordering them not to explain the situations to patients who are becoming angry when they're told that, hey, tests can't be done right now, or wrong medication was delivered, all sorts of mix-ups, kind of defaulting to more analog approaches. Is this example, Dimitri, of maybe brand reputation management and lawsuit avoidance going too far, or is this just where we are right now? They are, they are a company. They have a reputation that they, want to project. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, it's Black Pasta time again, right? It
Yeah,
was, perhaps they should be the next sponsor of the show.
I mean,
And
they're making some money, so yeah.
yeah, exactly. Well, I do understand that the hospital management could have mixed feelings. So on the one hand, you don't want to scare off the patients even further. On the other hand, probably not telling the full truth. So I believe that in the long run, radical transparency is the only way out of such a serious breach. There's more than enough academic research that more and more customer value sits in the trust that customer has in the company, that that will safeguard their well-being and data. Uh, but of course, I cannot judge on this specific case. But yeah, I think transparency is the way to go for the long run.
Yeah, I know in the immediate aftermath, there may be certain things that they're limited in saying in terms of, something is under investigation, so they can't comment on certain stuff. But like, you can still give a baseline explanation to customers and not put your employees kind of in this impossible middleman situation where they're delivering visibly degraded service and not even giving them, I guess, the courtesy of
Yeah.
more of an explanation. Like that to me is where, like, I understand sometimes your hands are tied in specifics, but you can at least, be a little bit more upfront, I think.
Well, I think the first steps in remediation is also to set up a Q&A and have your communications department create a narrative.
Mhm.
I
Yeah,
doubt if
definitely.
this has been done properly. Yeah.
All right. Well, our next story, one of my favorites from this week: Senator calls for United Health C-suite to be held accountable. Yesterday, Senator Ron Wyden of Oregon unloaded on United Health Group, sending a 4-page letter to regulators calling for the company's leaders to be held responsible for negligence connected to the ransomware attack on Change Healthcare. Comparing it to SolarWinds, Wyden pointed out that the CISO was inexperienced, but says it would also be unfair to scapegoat the CISO when the C-suite is to blame for approving his hire. Basically, they were saying that they hired a CISO that had never worked full-time in any kind of cybersecurity position. So, Dimitri, interesting development in terms of the fact that, CISOs, a CISO here is not being thrown under the bus, as we've, seen with SolarWinds, arguably seen with, former Uber CISO Joe Sullivan. I'm curious, do you see this as maybe, shifting kind of the responsibility, maybe a little bit, where the buck stops?
Well, if Senator Wyden threw the CISO under the bus altogether, but in a different manner,
Wait,
claiming
it
that
certainly was not complimentary to the guy, for
no,
sure.
no. I mean, I looked it up. He said, like, due to his apparent lack of prior experience in cybersecurity, it would be unfair to scapegoat Mr. Martin for UHG cybersecurity lapses. I mean, ouch. I mean, I bet you a nice bottle of wine he's not getting a LinkedIn recommendation by the senator.
He's not getting his cybersecurity skill endorsed by
No.
anybody by Ron Wyden right now.
I mean, yeah, my humble advice to boards would be hire an experienced CISO. I mean, this is a dumb thing.
Yeah, that I mean, it is really I wonder because the SEC and the FTC are now involved. I mean, theoretically, could be involved in investigating in that specific aspect specifically. So I wonder if we will get some kind of what was the discovery process, right? What is the hiring process? I'd be very interested to see like what were the priorities they had when bringing on this individual into the CISO role, and what were they looking for. And CCL in our chat says, definitely need personal accountability, or else we will never solve this kind of issue. And just in general, I think, I mean, we talk about this all the time on the CISO Series podcast of, kind of understanding, empowering that role, but with someone that can, kind of bridge the gap between cybersecurity and the business, not just, I guess, theoretically. I don't know how this person did their job. So, but it's not a great look. Certainly is not a great look. All right, and our last story of the day, one that hits close to home, Dutch bank ABN AMRO discloses a data breach. This breach has been announced as being the result of a ransomware attack suffered by a third-party vendor, Adcom, a company that distributes documents and tokens physically and digitally to clients and employees. Adcom has contained the incident and is investigating what data may have been accessed, and ABN AMRO has stopped using the vendor's services. The bank also states that there are currently no indicators of that attackers have used the data of its customers. So, Dimitri, kind of a homegrown story for you. And once again, we're looking at a third-party vendor as a weak point here. My question to you, is it appropriate for an afflicted organization in any country to sever ties so quickly with the vendor, especially when they may need their help to analyze the breach? Like, is that, I guess, the usual process here for something like this?
I don't think so. But first of all, I think the fact that they could leave the relationship is a good sign of not being in a vendor lock-in, right?
That's true.
I mean, so many problems occur if you can't leave. But I do understand the relationship angle you're taking. I can talk from experience a little bit. We had a similar case a year ago where a third party's supplier was breached, and we had to notify 780,000 travelers. But we're still working together because during the incident we build up trust. And the first thing I think we normally do when an incident is happening with one of our suppliers is they call me, and I offer them our help, because we have more than 100 experts on board, and many times it's SMEs that don't have the capability on board. So you try to help them first, and then if they don't comply, if they don't, work fast and give you full disclosure, then you do have a problem and you go to court. But I think solving the problem together ties a bond, and it makes the ecosystem better. So, but for this specific ABN AMRO case, I can't speculate that, what the reason was. But I guess trust wasn't helping.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the context of being in that similar situation, and yeah, coming down to what your current relationship is with someone in that position, how you discover the information, how upfront they are with you, like all of that feeds into kind of how your reactions are. So that's kind of the the hot seat perspective that I really appreciate, Dimitri. So thank you for that. That was awesome. Thanks to everybody that was participating in our chat. We had CCL coming in here. We had Kevin Farrell just checking in. He's in Italy, and he's just deciding to come on in between some pizza and tiramisu, and just to come in and say hi. So we appreciate that. And of course, the big boss man,
Ciao.
David Spark. Yeah, ciao. Of course, Kevin. Please have some fun in Italy. I wish I was broadcasting from there as well. Before we get out of here, Dimitri, was any story that you reacted strongly to today? A thumbs up, an eye roll, a teeth grit, even. What do you got?
I think I would have a thumbs up for one of the things that you had in your shows this week. It was the End Game by Europol. A big
Yes.
operation, the largest ever operation, they call it, against botnets. So that's a big kudos for them. They brought it down, and I think 1/3 of the servers was operating from the Netherlands. So we're in the news again.
But
That's
it was
that's
good. It was
it was
good.
good. Yes, it was good news. And
Yeah,
I
that
think the last thing I'd like to say is today I received on the doormat the copy of the Donald Duck, and this Donald Duck was all about cybersecurity. And it was Scrooge McDuck. Its HR system was hacked by the Beagle Boys adversaries, and they circumvented their way into his money vault, making use of a geolocation app on the tablet. And luckily, Daisy Duck played the layer defense role, and all ended well. So, I mean, we can retire now, right?
I
Now
I
it's
I
become
guess you could call
mainstream.
that defense in duck, folks.
Oh,
That's
sharp! You're
no,
sharp.
no. I'm gonna this I would get an elbow in the ribs if I made that joke around my wife. That is official dad joke territory, and you're welcome. Thank you so much, Dimitri van Zantvliet, CISO at Dutch Railways, giving us on the ground perspective on the news, sharing Donald Duck cybersecurity content. Who would have guessed? Fantastic. Where can people find you online if they are so inclined?
I think LinkedIn would be the best place to look for me.
Excellent. And I have a question. Are you hiring at Dutch Railways?
Oh yeah, we have beautiful vacancies for cybersecurity experts. So have a look at our website.
Fantastic. Make sure you do that. We will have that link in our show notes. Thanks also to our sponsor for today, Vanta, compliance that doesn't suck too much. Thanks to all of our audience today. We can't always get every single comment up on screen, but we deeply appreciate you being here, participating, making it just more fun and a good time and a good hang on a Friday afternoon, at least for those of us on the Eastern time zone. Come back next Friday for another great day of interactive information and I'm going to say infotainment, starting with Super Cyber Friday, where the topic will be hacking SOC 2 versus ISO 27001. An hour of critical thinking about the value of these compliance standards. That's at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific, followed by another weekend review show at 3:30 Eastern on Friday. In the meantime, you can still get your daily news fix, cybersecurity headlines every single day. Give us about 6 minutes. We'll get you all caught up. Until the next time we meet, I'm Rich Straffolino, reminding you to have a super sparkly day.
Cybersecurity headlines are available every weekday. Head to CISOSeries.com for the full stories behind the headlines.